good evening, good evening. And here I am doing a very late and impromptu live. So I doubt that there'll be many people on here watching live because I've just come on to do it. And the reason is that I promised this before Christmas, but unfortunately we had the sick bug and we have some internet issues all on the lead up to Christmas. And with 4 children, it was obviously pretty crazy with carol concerts and Christmas parties. And anyway, the week just overtook me, and so I didn't get here, so apologies. But I wanted to come on and just talk to you a little bit about children learning language in chunks or in sentences, because it came up as a question, and I just thought it'd be something that you'd be quite interested in, and probably something that a few of you are seeing in your children. So we've talked before about typical language development, and you can go back and have a look at those videos. They're uploaded onto YouTube and they are on my website. And if you're watching, give me a hashtag live. It's always nice to know that I'm not talking to myself. And give me a hashtag live if you're watching live, and a hashtag replay if you watch on replay, just so that I can see that people are watching. Facebook isn't always good at showing you that. I'm sorry, my computer's flipping. I'm going to try and stop it. And so, yeah, just to recap, so what we know is that children typically, and obviously, you know, this group is full of children not learning language typically, but just if we take it as a comparison, so typically children learn to understand one word at a time. So if you point things out in a book, where's the cow, where's the cup, where's the bottle, they'll be able to point those things out. They then begin to use one word, so and then once they've got about 50, 60, 70 words, they begin to combine them. So they begin to do 2 words together. Daddy's shoe, bye bye mummy. So simple sentences where they combine 2 ideas. They then go on to do 3 words, and then grammar comes into it later on at 4 words. And that's a kind of typical preschool pattern that we see. But for some children, they don't learn language like that. They learn it in a more chunk fashion. So they will learn phrases as a whole and then use them. And for some children, they do that very appropriately. So they will learn a chunk of language and then they will use it in the right context, and it will make sense, and that's okay. And for other children, they will learn big long chunks of language and then they will just say them almost for their own pleasure, so it's not necessarily carrying any meaning. And so what I would suggest that you look for is if children are using phrases quite quickly. Now my daughter did this, my eldest daughter, so she learnt to talk very quickly, but she very quickly was using phrases, and she would use phrases not always in the right context. So for example, she at about 18 months, I remember my husband coming home with a sandpit for her. It was in the summer, so she's probably maybe more kind of 19, 20 months, and she was always a good talker, and she talked a lot, but she learnt these phrases. So she said, "Oh, this is the best party ever, Daddy," and what she meant was, "Oh, I'm really pleased with this sandpit, this is great." And at 18 months she said, "Excuse me please, peoples, move out of the way," to some people in the shop, which she was a tiny little dot, and she didn't grow hair very quickly, so she looked like a baby at kind of 12, 13 months, and came out with all this language. And I was thinking, well, first I've learned that children use one word and then they put 2 words together, and this is very strange because she's not doing that. She's blown that out of the water. She's talking in sentences, but actually what she was doing was she was learning and regurgitating within context whole sentences. And it's really interesting because then she went on to read in a very similar way. She learnt whole words. Now it kind of serves you quite well, and particularly if you don't pick up on it. So I did begin to pick up on it and realise, and I kind of backtracked a little bit and went and filled in the gaps for her and helped to fill in the gap, because I had the advantage of being a speech therapist. But for other parents, you wouldn't necessarily notice it happening. You just think, oh, they're talking really well, or that was a bit of an odd thing to say, but hey ho, we all say odd things. But actually, you know, it does serve children well early on, because they can use that, but what they can't then do as they get older is begin to use imaginary sentences or express more complex ideas, because they've learnt the language in these chunks, and for them it just has to fit in. So it can give a false illusion as well of being much better at understanding. So if your child has learnt all these kind of phrases that they're using, whether that's appropriately or not necessarily in the right context, it looks as though their understanding is good because, excuse me, I'm still coughing. So it looks as if they understand a lot more, and we match our language to their language. So if they're talking these little phrases or even longer sentences, or for some children they'll kind of regurgitate scripts of popular their favourite TV shows, or of what the teacher said in preschool, or of what family members have said, or what you say, and they'll kind of use this language over and over again. And it'll look like, oh well, they must understand because they're using all these language, but it masks the fact that actually they're not understanding, and their understanding is much further behind than this kind of spiel of sentences. And you know, they can only say things in one way. So like my daughter said, oh, this is the best party ever, which she'd obviously heard in the context of something being a great party. She then was using that to express her delight in other ways that wasn't necessarily the right way to say it. Sometimes it comes from an attention and listening difficulty, so their attention captures these, but actually listening to the detail and the breakdown is really difficult for them. Sometimes it comes because parents are talking a lot with their children, and so the child's learning in that same way. Quite often these children have really good memories, and that's one thing with my daughter still now at 16, that a memory is her strength, and anything that she can learn by memory she does really well at, and things where she has to work out can be more difficult for her. Although I will put into context that she hasn't now got any language difficulties. You know, she overcame that, so it doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to be a long-term problem for your child, but it does mean that they need a bit of extra support, a bit of extra scaffolding, because it can mean that they miss out on these things, and that these gaps only show up when they get to school, or for some cases only show up when the child gets to kind of year 2, where they're supposed to be doing more analytical stuff with language. So they're looking at passages, they're changing the way things are said, they're looking at synonyms and homonyms, and it all gets much more complicated. But they've missed out on this very early language. So it's really worth recognising in the early years, so that you can put into place strategies to help to support them. So my top tips would be to listen out for it. And what you're listening for is lack of errors. So children in the preschool years should make lots and lots of errors. So they should make errors in words, so they should use the wrong word. They should make errors in the grammar that they're using, in the word order that they're using, in the way they're saying things. So there should be lots of errors, and errors are really good. And I always say that to parents, oh, brilliant, I'm really glad I heard them make that error, because actually what that tells me is that they're putting this together, they're using the brain to put these little ideas together and form a whole sentence. So looking out for errors. So my top tip would be go back to the stage that your child's understanding is at, and use strategies suitable for a child of that age. Go back to naming things, go back to looking at pictures in books that are simple, go back to talking in 2-word sentences, go back to commenting, because what we know is that children need to fill the gaps. Also happens in bilingualism, so if that's something in your family, this is worth doing, because sometimes what happens in bilingualism is that children learn within one context how to talk about certain things, and in one language. So say, for example, in the home environment they're speaking French, and in the nursery environment they're speaking English. So they'll learn the words like kitchen and bathroom and social words, and the words for people in their family in French, because that's the home language. And then they'll go to nursery and learn words for the different kinds of toys, or the shapes, or the in English. So they end up with 2 separate vocabularies, and they might have the learnt phrases with that. So it's about looking at what the gaps are and trying to fill those in and give them those words by going back a stage in your strategies. And so the key points are, look out for it, it's definitely a thing. If your child, just going back a little bit actually, if your child is regurgitating lots and lots of language from their favourite TV show, so they're relaying scripts, or they're doing that in things that they've heard you say or other people say, and it's not within context, then the best thing to do is have a look at what the child is doing then and just model the words. So almost ignore it. Ignore it because it's not functional. At first you won't think to ignore it because you'll think, oh, they're talking, and you want to reinforce that talking. But just take a step back and think, well, is this communicating something we're talking about now, or is this actually relevant to this situation? And if it's irrelevant, then it's about kind of reinforcing the relevant words at that moment. So my top tips are to really tune into it, know when it's happening, know that it's often masking comprehension difficulties, or not necessarily difficulties, but just that the comprehension isn't at that level yet. Don't take it that what they say represents how much they understand, which in typical development you can do, but not with children that are learning in this way. Go back, create a scaffold, use strategies to help them to support the language, and to ignore when there's lots and lots of talking that's irrelevant. I hope that's helpful. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you watch this. Give me any comments, any likes. It really helps me to know that my lives are being watched, and just want to take this opportunity to wish you all a very happy new year for 2019. I've got so much in store for you. I've got loads of people who are looking to do lives on this page to give you a broader perspective, and also lots of ideas for training coming forward. So yeah, look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye bye.